So hi everyone, I'm Jay from University of Central Florida. It is my pleasure to present our work for today is from large to Mammoth, comparative evaluation of large language models in vulnerability detections. So large language models excel at code understanding and generations, making them promising for large-scale vulnerability detections. And however, we still lack of clarity on how factors like model size, context window, and quantization affect the results. So traditional static analysis, static or dynamic analysis relies on external tools. Of course, large language models itself is external tools, but essentially large language models is a tool that can analyze the source code from end to end and give the verdict like a human being. So by evaluating multiple large language model architectures, we highlight each model's strength, weakness, and real-world viability. So these are 5 questions guide our study. First, we measure how accurately large language models detect the vulnerability in file level. Secondly, we see if a bigger context window improves the result. Thirdly, we check whether the quantization hurts the accuracy. Fourth, we compare a new model architecture to older ones, for example, LLaMA 3 compared to LLaMA 2. Finally, we see if a few label examples can improve the detection accuracy. This is a general pipeline for our work experiment. From left to right, there are dataset preparations, curated datasets, experiment pipeline, and lastly, we do the evaluations. We source our data from 2 main datasets. One is one for J, that's for Java, and Big Vol for C and C++. After retrieving the relevant source code from the GitHub, we use the tracer to remove the comments and the non-code artifacts, and we then manually filter out some duplicates or incomplete data. Ultimately, we arrive to 280 files for the Java and 200 files for C and C++, evenly split in vulnerable and non-vulnerable codes. We test a wide range of models and to see how various architectures, model, parameter size, and the context window capability influence the detection accuracy. So GPT-4 here is only used as a reference point. So we use a very straightforward prompting tailored for Java as an example here, asking the model for a simple yes or no alongside with a brief explanation. We hold the temperature at 0.5, fix the seed at 42 for consistent outputs, and cap the output size to be 2048 to prevent excessive or endless generations. And this table presents our baseline test where we only input vulnerable code files to each model. We focus on 2 matrices, AP, that is the fraction of files correctly flagged as vulnerable, and the VAP as the fraction of vulnerabilities each model identify at least once across all files tied to that vulnerability. By isolating the positive samples, we see how reliable these models detect known vulnerabilities under a simpler condition. So this chart is basically another representation for the data we showed in the previous slide. And Gemma here reaches near at 79% on AP and 93% on VAP. LLaMA 2 also performs strongly. Models like CodeLLaMA and GPT-4 end up in lower than anticipated, illustrating that specialized or proprietary models aren't guaranteed to excel. So this table measures how consistently the model declares a file is vulnerable or not in a clear instruction following manner. So EP counts the fraction of files that directly says yes or no statement, and the VEP reflects how many vulnerabilities get at least one explicit verdict. So this chart is basically another representation for the table we have in the previous slide. And GPT-4 and the Mixtral top at 100% here, never missing a clear yes or no. CodeLLaMA and LLaMA 3 also scores high, showing that newer or domain-tuned models can be very explicit. So in summary, this test on files that are vulnerable, we see no simple rules for performance. Larger models don't always yield higher AP or VAP, and quantization works differently depending on the architecture. Typically, bigger context window help. Overall, the findings underscore a complex interplay of model size, and quantization and architecture. we further expand our experiment beyond that vulnerable-only experiment by adding the non-vulnerable, which is the safe ones for the Java experiment. Since larger context window generally boosts the performance, we use a maximum capacity, that is context window, for each model in this zero-shot test. The same yes or no prompt applies here. This table is a smaller excerpt from our more extensive result, showing each model family's best performing configuration plus overall top performer on Java. To save time, I'm just directly jumping to the analysis. So from this result, several patterns emerged. First, with the certain models emphasize precision, while the others stand out in recall. We also see a bigger parameter counts don't consistently yield better performance. And quantization preference different by family. Finally, advanced or domain-focused variant don't automatically surpass earlier generations. So our C and C++ experiment closely mirror to Java setup with just the code referencing C or C++ in the prompt. So and this experiment is still under zero-shot condition using each model's largest context window. So this table is a subset of our larger result from the paper, highlighting a few standout models configurations. And for the analysis that is saying, this experiment shows that the quantization gains depending heavily on model family. So Gemma performs better in FP16, while CodeGemma prefers the Q5KM quantization. Larger architectures often underperform smaller ones, with LLaMA-3 70B variant even failing to detect any vulnerabilities. So Mistral's newer models like Mistral, that is also lag behind its predecessor. All of this suggests that neither big nor more advanced model means automatically good or better. So in the following experiment, we added two label examples, one vulnerable, one non-vulnerable, into the prompt to see if just a few samples that can improve the accuracy or detection rates for the Java. We select the top zero-shot performance, and our goal is to observe whether providing the minimal guidance significantly boosts the accuracy in spotting or detecting vulnerabilities. So this result basically is saying what we are seeing is a consistent drop from the zero-shot to few-shot experiment. The drop in the performance may stem from the expanded prompt overshadowing the actual code or from the example snippets introducing conflict queues. So some models also became too cautious, leading to steep decline in recall. Overall, few-shot didn't boost the detection in this setup. So in our C and C++ few-shot test, each model got two label examples as well, but this approach collapsed performance to 0% in precision, recall, and F1. Some models misclassified everything as safe. Others split mistake between false positive and the negatives. So these inconsistent behaviors suggest that minimum few-shot prompts may confuse the model in C and C++. So after testing whether the model can detect vulnerabilities at all, we push them to identify which type vulnerability exists. So we only focus on the files that are known to be vulnerable because it is make little sense to classify a type in the non-vulnerable code. The prompt now is asking a CVE ID and a short description. And we measure two matrices, AP, and did the model still flag the files as vulnerable? And C, did it name the correct type? We also tried a few-shot setup by providing two example vulnerabilities, and though we removed them from the main data sets to avoid leakage. So this table is a smaller slide from our overall Java type identification result, showing each model's zero-shot accuracy alongside its few-shot accuracy. So based on the table, we know that some model maintains moderate AP. Virtually all fails at identifying the specific type. Most remain as 0 or just a few correct case. Moreover, switching to few-shot often lower the overall accuracy. This highlights how multi-class labeling is significantly tougher than simply at detecting if the code is vulnerable. We also examined how context window model size and quantization affect the runtime. So larger context window can slow the prompt analysis phase, but speeding up in response generation phase. Bigger models like LLaMA-2 at 7 dB inherently longer. Quantization like Q5KM cuts this time down, striking a balance between performance and resource demand. So in summarization, so large language models do work for vulnerability detections, but performance varies sharply across language. Java fares better than C or C++, and most models failed to identify exact vulnerability type. And a larger context window help accuracy and reduce hallucinations, whereas the quantization impact depending on each architecture. Surprisingly, advanced model and few-shot learning often underperform. Ultimately, domain-focused tuning and careful prompt design seems vital for reliable real-world results. So in conclusion here, we test 38 large language model configurations on Java and C or C+ vulnerability detection task, seeing that model like Gemma can excel but still greatly by language and setup. Large context window often help, though architecture upgrades like LLaMA 3 and Phi 3 aren't guaranteed to outperform an old version as LLaMA 2 and Phi 2. Few-shot prompt can unexpectedly hurt the performance. Few-shot and strong Java outcomes don't always transform to C or C++. Crucially, open source containers like Gemma or LLaMA-2 can outperform GPT-4, suggesting practical and cost-effective solution despite these limitations. Moving forward, refining model architectures, balancing the context usage, and improving the prompt strategy should be our focus alongside expanding the broader code domains. And thank you.
All right. Questions? Yeah, it's better to come to the microphone so everyone can see hear your question more clearly.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I'm Tian from University of California, Irvine. So I know the paper has submitted a while ago, but have you tried like a new reasoning model lately? Because I found that for previous models like GPT-4, they just like when you ask questions about ask them to understanding the code, they would just like say something that sounds intelligent, but just like basically nonsense. But recently, when I play with like O1 and O3, it sounds like they can understand like the code a bit better. So have you tried them with like O3 and see if it's like able to detect the vulnerability better?
Yes, this is our ongoing project and with testing that reasoning models, specifically that O1 and O1 mini and O3. Basically, we are also testing that DeepSeek R1 as our experiment, part of our experiment. We are still seeing the progress is going, but unfortunately, right now, I do not have any results. But I do understand that a reasoning model can be performing better than the traditional models.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, they are thinking. I have one question. I'm wondering whether there's any data leakage problem in your evaluation. So these models are trained. Do you look at like the data set, the time when they trained, whether your vulnerability data sets are included in their evaluation, their training or not?
So that is a very good question. So about the data leakage, even though we say that open source models is open source, but we still don't know what kind of data is used for training. So for this part, we cannot prevent any data leakage. But in our experiment, we actually prevent data leakage. We actually, for each prompting running, we just fully offload the model and reload the model into the memory to prevent that previous system prompt can occur some errors in the next prompt. So that is one prompt strategy where that data leakage strategy we're using for preventing that. And also, we also mentioned about our few-shot learning. For the few-shot learning, we actually exclude whatever including the system prompt in the data set for the experiment. So that is, I think, is more better for the data leakage, at least for this context.
Speaking of the few-shot learning, can you give some more details, like what for each, let's say, vulnerability, what kind of few-shot examples you provide? Because your conclusion is like it's actually making it worse. So yeah.
Yes. So for this one, we're actually using randomly selected to one vulnerable code from our data set and a non-vulnerable code from our data set, and giving input that entire source code into the prompt, and it's stating that this code is vulnerable or not vulnerable, and into the sysprompt, and then ask the model to analyze whatever is going to be input for the next round. So that is what we have doing in the few shot learning, a few shot experiment.
So that means you are not actually doing something like retrieving something similar, code with similar vulnerabilities or similar code patterns as example.
Exactly, we are not doing that.
Okay. All right.
This is a very naive way for the few shot learning, but I would still think it's a very good, promising road for the future development of large language models and vulnerability detection tools.
All right. If there's no more questions, let's thank the speaker again.
Thank you so much.